The dawn over Nova Basan should have been gentle and golden mist, the hum of tractors, the echo of bells from a village church. But that morning, 11 October 2025, the air trembled under the roar of engines. From the northern ridges came the sound of tanks, T-90 beasts wrapped in smoke and dust now, followed by the metallic cry of infantry fighting vehicles rolling across the frozen fields. Within minutes, the first shells fell. The ground split open, wheat fields burned, and the calm countryside was torn apart by thunder. From the distance, Ukrainian batteries responded, HIMARS launchers flaring against the horizon, sending precision fire like arrows of light. Above them, drones moved through the smoke, small and silent, hunting for heat signatures. This was not a clash of soldiers alone. It was the awakening of modern military equipment, our machines built by human hands, now deciding the fate of human hearts. As the sun rose higher, its light could not pierce the clouds of ash. And among that silence, one question remained: would mercy survive the machines? The horizon was a blur of dust and fire. Russian armored columns advanced like a moving storm, 19 T-90 tanks in arrow formation, 14 BMP-2 vehicles crawling behind, and 2 BM-30 rocket systems lobbing their thunder from the rear. Each shell landed with the weight of a falling mountain, tearing craters across the Kuryuka corridor. The quiet countryside of Nova Basan became an inferno of shrapnel and shattered stone. At the forward trench, Ukrainian spotters reported through trembling radio lines. Targets confirmed, armor heading southeast, distance 5 kilometers. Within seconds, orders rippled through the chain of command. HIMARS crews aligned their launch rails to the coordinates. A cold mechanical sound echoed as the guided rockets ignited. They streaked across the sky like blue spears, their trails burning against the low morning clouds. 2 impacts. Then, the plane erupted in waves of pressure and dust. The Russian spearhead staggered, but did not stop. Behind the smoke, the second line of armor pressed forward, their tracks grinding over the wrecks of the first. The ground itself seemed to breathe, every breath a rumble of diesel and fire. To the west, Ukrainian PzH2000 self-propelled howitzers opened fire. The roar of 155mm shells folded into the wind. The sky darkened, filled with smoke, sparks, and fragments of soil that rained upon helmets and gun barrels. Inside a command vehicle, Major Ostapa, calm despite the tremor in his voice, spoke softly. "Hold the line. Let them come deeper. Every meter they take will be their grave." On a nearby ridge, small reconnaissance drones hovered, relaying live images of the advancing formation. They moved like silent crows above the chaos, their lenses glinting in the flames. This was the new language of warriors, precision-guided, satellite-linked, and merciless. No man shouted in triumph, no anthem played. Only the hum of engines and the rhythmic heartbeat of artillery filled the morning. And as the smoke rose higher, the people of Nova Basan hid in their cellars, listening to the thunder above. The iron wave had arrived, and it was only the beginning. From the smoke of the burning ridge came a new sound. Not thunder, not engines, but the low hum of rotors slicing the air. The Ka-52 Alligator helicopters appeared like dark angels descending through the clouds. Their pods of unguided rockets ignited, streaking down in fiery arcs that tore through the tree line. The explosions rolled in waves, shaking the frozen soil until it bled sparks. Below, Ukrainian gunners ducked beneath collapsing branches. The radio crackled with overlapping voices. Ka-52s inbound, prepare counterfire. A moment later, Stinger missiles rose from concealed positions. Thin plumes of white smoke traced their flight as they locked onto the heat of the helicopters. One Alligator flared, twisting violently, but a missile struck its tail. The machine spun like a wounded bird and crashed into a farmhouse, vanishing in a blossom of fire. In the chaos, the true hunters moved unseen. FPV drones, a small, improvised, deadly, slipped between shattered trees. Each carried a PG-7VL warhead, its fuse no larger than a finger. Guided by operators miles away, the drones drifted like ghosts above the battlefield. Inside a dim basement, a young technician named Mikola leaned over his console, his fingers danced across the controls, his eyes fixed on the grainy feed. On the screen, a Russian BMP came into view, smoke rising from its turret. Mikola whispered, "Hold still," and pressed the trigger. The screen flashed white. Connection lost. One machine erased another, thousands of meters apart. Electronic warfare units joined the invisible duel. Antennas rotated, sending bursts of interference that rippled through the sky. For a brief second, the K-52s lost their targeting data. Ukrainian drones took advantage, swooping in from behind to deliver precise strikes. Circuits against circuits, algorithms against instincts away to where the battlefield no longer belonged entirely to men. Major Ostap watched the pattern unfold on his tactical display. "They adapt faster than we can breathe," he muttered. Beside him, an officer replied, "Then we must remember what they cannot fear, and mercy." The radio static hummed like breathing. Machines learned, but they did not feel. Yet every blast carried the echo of human intent, the will to protect, the desperation to survive. By noon, half the Russian advance had stalled. Burnt metal lay twisted across the fields, smoke curling toward the grey sky. Mikola removed his headset, his ears ringing, his heartbeat loud in the silence. For a moment he wondered whether the machines heard the same silence after they killed. Somewhere above the drifting ash, a drone camera lingered on the wreckage, its lens reflecting both sides of the war. It saw no flags, no victory, only the endless exchange between fire and circuits. By 12:30, the battlefield had become a blur of dust, smoke, and broken echoes. The Russian armor pressed deeper into Nova Basan, unaware that every meter of soil beneath their tracks had already been mapped, measured, and wired. Major Ostap stood over a tactical screen, glowing dim green in the basement of a half-collapsed farmhouse. Around him, engineers whispered over coordinates, their fingers tracing invisible lines between villages and riverbeds. "Directional mines set, seismic sensors active," one reported. Ostap gave a single nod. "Then we wait." The trap was not built on strength, but on timing. At 9:20, a T-90 triggered a buried sensor near the Kuryuka lane. The explosion split the ground open, throwing the 50-ton vehicle into the air. Its turret spun free, a black flame consuming it before it landed. For a moment, the valley was silent. Then, Ukrainian artillery spoke. The PzH2000 batteries unleashed their barrage. Shells rained down in measured rhythm, each detonation echoing like a heartbeat through the hills. The rear of the Russian column, ignited fuel trucks, burst. BMPs overturned, crews scrambling for cover. The kill zone had closed. HIMARS units joined the assault from the western ridges. Guided by satellite, their rockets struck with inhuman precision. One missile pierced the T-90's ammunition rack, producing a fireball that rolled 20 meters high. The shockwave shattered windows miles away. Through the smoke, Ukrainian infantry advanced, not in triumph but in silence. They moved between craters and shattered vehicles, each step deliberate. From above, FPV drones guided their path, marking the safe routes, hunting any remaining armor. For the first time that day, the momentum shifted. The radio chatter turned from panic to grim control. Section 3C, flank left. Section 5, cover advance. Voices calm, trained, almost surgical. The iron wave was now breaking against its own reflection. In the chaos, a Russian commander attempted to regroup his forces. His tank turned to withdraw, only to be caught in crossfire, machine against machine, decision against algorithm. Within seconds, the convoy was burning, the sound of detonating shells drowning out every other noise. At the edge of the field, Mikola's drone camera captured the aftermath. Tanks lay like fallen giants, their shadows stretching across the scarred earth. Through his headset, Ostap's voice came steady. Hold position. Let the smoke settle. The field is ours all for now. As the wind carried the echo of distant explosions, the soldiers of Nova Basan exhaled in unison. The turning point had come not from greater firepower but from patience, coordination, and the stubborn will of human minds guiding military equipment built to destroy. And, above the ruins, the sky turned copper, half flame, half hope. By mid-afternoon, the battle had climbed into the heavens. The smoke rising from Nova Basan merged with the clouds, turning the whole horizon into a burning veil. Overhead, the air vibrated with the thunder of engines. Two Su-27 fighters burst through the haze, their silver wings cutting sunlight into ribbons. They banked hard, climbing to meet the incoming threats. Two Russian MiG-31s on interception vector. The sky became a chessboard of contrails and sonic bursts. Falcon 1. Lock target. Locked. Range 3 kilometers. Missiles streaked. The first collided mid-air, scattering shards of light. The second found its mark. One MiG broke apart, its wreckage spiraling like burning paper. The survivor disengaged, climbing back toward the upper stratosphere. For a moment, the Ukrainian pilot hovered in calm silence, staring at the drifting fragments. Below, the ground forces looked up. The men saw not victory, but a brief clearing in the storm. Then the thunder returned. Ka-52s re-entered the fight, firing salvos into the smoke. Ukrainian electronic warfare units countered, flooding enemy channels with static. Radar screens blinked. Targets vanished. Missiles veered off course. Major Ostap listened to the interference wash through his headset like waves on a broken shore. "Keep the jamming constant," he ordered. "Give our pilots a blind sky." On the command frequency, the voice of one pilot came through, calm, almost serene. "We see the fire, sir. The whole town glows. The whole town glows. Tell them we are still flying." Ostap did not answer. He simply looked out from the shattered window of his post, watching streaks of light cross the sky like falling stars. Somewhere amid the chaos, mercy still existed there, in the steady voice of a pilot refusing to surrender, in the medic dragging the wounded from rubble, in the villager holding a child beneath a collapsed roof. The battle was no longer only about territory. It was about endurance, the human heart against the machine. "These modern military equipment," Ostap murmured, "they roar like gods, yet they cry like men." At 1600 hours, the last HIMARS salvo was launched, striking a distant ammunition depot. A black pillar of smoke rose, spiraling 500 meters into the air. The shock wave rolled through the valley, flattening the last echoes of combat. As the sound faded, only the wind remained, whispering through broken rafters. The sky above Nova Basan burned with the reflection of countless fire seas, each one a memory, each one a prayer. When the last echo of artillery faded, silence did not return. It stumbled, wounded, through the ruins. The once green fields of Nova Basan had turned grey, blanketed in ash and the metallic scent of burning fuel. Tanks stood motionless like monuments to exhaustion, their armor scorched, their cannons drooping toward the earth. Ukrainian soldiers moved carefully among the wrecks. The air still shimmered with heat. Every step was measured, every breath cautious. Mines remained buried under layers of soot, and unexploded shells slept beneath collapsed roofs. From the north came the low hum of medical drones scanning for movement, machines of war now searching for signs of life. Mikola, his hands still trembling from hours behind the drone console, now walked the real battlefield. The screen he once stared into was gone, replaced by faces, dust-covered, bloodied, alive. He found a wounded Russian tanker slumped beside his ruined T-90, the man barely conscious. For a moment, both stared at each other through cracked visors. No words, only the shared disbelief that they were still breathing. Mikola removed his glove and poured water into the soldier's mouth. The man's hand shook as he tried to salute. Farther east, medics pulled civilians from cellars. Mothers clutched children who could not yet cry. One woman whispered, "Is it over?" A soldier answered quietly, "For today." By 1700 hours, fires were being extinguished. Engineers marked safe corridors with white ribbons tied to broken fences. Radio broadcasts shifted tone, no longer orders of attack, but coordinates for evacuation. The same network that guided missiles now guided mercy. In the command post, Major Ostap looked over the map of the day's battle. Targets had been erased, replaced with handwritten notes: hospital, water, safe route. He leaned back, eyes closed. "We held," he said softly, "but what did we keep?" Outside, the wind carried the ashes across the plain like snow. The smell of diesel mixed with the faint scent of rain, a fragile promise of cleansing. As dusk descended, church bells rang somewhere beyond the hills. The sound was cracked, uneven, yet achingly human. Soldiers paused to listen. Now, one by one, helmets lowered, not in defeat, but in remembrance. The hour of ash had arrived. It was neither victory nor surrender, only the quiet recognition that amid the debris of military equipment, something fragile had survived: compassion. And in that moment, as the smoke thinned into the evening sky, humanity exhaled, aching, imperfect, but still alive. As night settled over Nova Basan, the battlefield no longer roared. Instead, it pulsed faintly with radio beacons, each transmitting a single code. SAF crossed the plains. The last drones circled in silence, their lenses reflecting the orange glow of distant fires. For the first time in 14 hours, there were no explosions, only the quiet rhythm of data signals crossing a darkened sky. Hundreds of kilometers away, in London, the British Ministry of Defence issued its statement. On the glowing screens of command centres and newsrooms, the words scrolled: over 85,000 drones delivered to Ukraine within 6 months, 14,500 units each month. A £600 million aid package, the largest expansion since the conflict began. To some, it was a figure of logistics. To others, it was hope made visible through military equipment. Behind every delivery crate stood technicians, engineers, and volunteers who might never see the war, but whose designs would alter its course. From Germany came another message: additional artillery shells, training divisions for air defense, and support for electronic warfare. The European response was no longer passive. It had become symphonic. Drones, satellites, radars, code sang, all moving together like an invisible orchestra playing for survival. Inside the Ukrainian command post, Major Ostap listened to the international frequency, static, mixed with voices from across continents: British, Polish, German, each one reporting supply drops, relay connections, signal handovers. For a moment, war felt less like destruction and more like a desperate form of communication between nations trying to preserve what remained of decency. On his table lay a small radio marked Channel Mercy. It was linked to the humanitarian corridor, broadcasting the same message every hour: if you are wounded, do not move. Help is on the way. Ostap turned up the volume. The voice was calm, translated in 2 languages: Ukrainian and Russian. Even the machines paused to listen. The static softened. Somewhere beyond the smoke, lives were being saved by the same frequencies that once carried targeting commands. At the edge of the front line, Mikola looked up at a passing drone. Its lights blinked faintly before vanishing into the clouds. He whispered, "Carry this message home." And high above the silence, a final transmission left the battlefield as, not of coordinates or targets, but of endurance. It spoke through coded waves to whoever still listened. The true strength of nations is not in how they fight, but in how they heal. When the dawn returned to Nova Basan, it was pale and trembling. Smoke hung low over the river, drifting between the skeletons of bridges and the blackened shells of homes. In the soft light, everything seemed still, yet beneath the silence the earth whispered the memory of what it had endured. The battle was over, but his legacy remained etched in the metal, in the circuits, in the hearts of those who survived. Tanks that once thundered now stood rusting in the fields, their steel cooled by rain. Drones lay scattered among the wheat, their shattered propellers glittering like fallen wings. To the villagers, these were not just remnants of military equipment. They were reminders of both strength and sorrow, proof that human genius could build miracles, yet unleash ruin in the same breath. Major Ostap walked alone along the burned railway bridge. Each step echoed on twisted iron. He stopped midway and looked across the plain where the fires had burned brightest. "We have rebuilt walls before," he said quietly, "but never souls." His words faded into the mist, carried by the wind like a prayer. From the west, convoys brought aid, medical units, engineers, journalists. They filmed the ruins and asked their questions, yet what they captured was not only destruction, it was resilience. Old men clearing rubble, children drawing flags on scorched walls, women lighting candles where houses once stood. History would call it a victory. The maps would mark it as reclaimed land. But for those who had fought here, victory had changed its meaning. It was no longer measured in ground taken or enemies destroyed. It was the fragile act of choosing compassion over vengeance, of remembering humanity amid precision and power. The narrator's voice slowed, as if to breathe between the ruins. For all military equipment built, none can rebuild the human heart. For all military equipment tested, none can measure mercy. For all military equipment sent, may at least one carry the will to forgive. The camera of the story rose above Nova Basan fields, scarred but glimmering under the first drops of rain. The river reflected the light like a thin line of silver, stretching beyond the horizon. Somewhere far away, bells rang again, uncertain but defiant. In the end, the story of Nova Basan was not about the destruction of men, but their refusal to forget compassion. Because even in a world ruled by steel, circuits, and algorithms, it is still the trembling voice of mercy that defines what it means to be human. Peace, freedom. How much silence must a land lose before peace becomes a memory?